Big decisions in my life have always come easy and are made without hesitation. It is easier for me to make a life-changing decision than to decide what to get for dessert. Now, who said this? American skateboarder Tony Hawk. Understanding the right to choose your own path is a sacred privilege. Use it. Dwell in possibility. Now, who said this? Oprah Winfrey, talk show host, media tycoon, philanthropist. If you don't decide your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into somebody else's life plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. This one is a little bit harder, but guess who said this? It's actually Jim Rohn, and he's actually an entrepreneur, an author, and a motivational speaker. And my name is Myleen, and I'm here to talk about how to make a big life decision. Obviously, we've all had to make big life decisions over the course of our days, maybe when we were younger. I mean, really, many things are big life decisions. They really impact what happens in the future. So whether we decided what to take in university, whether to go to university, who to marry, whether to marry, children, do you want to have them? Where do you want to live? Do you want to live in a house or a condo? So various aspects of our lives we've had to make decisions. So the best way to make a good, sound decision is to plan. So what do you want to consider when making a big life decision? Well, you want to be proactive. So you want to know, what is the vision of my life? So knowing your vision, and here it says the 1 year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, I would even say. This helps you when you're making decisions because you can always go back to these goals and think, how is this decision going to help me in my goal? You want to research and experiment your options. So when you do come across a big decision, you want to be able to look at the options, well, figure out what these options are, do your research on each of the options, and if possible, maybe experiment and experience these options. And of course, you want to evaluate the pros and cons. So what are the positive aspects of each option, and what are the negative aspects of each option? And you want to consider that when you're making a decision. Now, visualizing your life, you want to think about what you want to accomplish and where you want to be. You also want to do that as far as blocks of time. So in 10 years, where do I want to be? In 5 years, where do I want to be so that I can get to where I want to go in 10 years? And in this next year, this 1 year, what am I going to do so that I can get closer to those goals that I had for the 5 year and the 10 year? So all very important that you want to consider. And you want to create a visual representation of your goals. So a lot of people like to write down their goals, you know, have that hanging somewhere where they can always refer back to it. I like to actually be a little more creative with that. So I actually have what I call a vision board, a life vision board. And so it is mixed in with a lot of positive quotes, along with a lot of my goals in life. So as you can see here, I have a picture of a house. I would like to buy a house one day. I also love to travel. So one of my goals is to visit all 7 continents, most especially Antarctica, Africa, and Australia, because I've never been to those places. Other things also involve, I would like to write a novel, so that's there as well. I would like to have a child. I would like to finish my Human Resources Management certificate at BCIT. So there are various factors that I have in my life, and when a decision comes along, I'll think back to these goals that I have and see how that decision will help me get to these goals. And you have to understand that goals can change. So sometimes you may decide when you're young, like, hey, you know what, I do want to go travel the world. This is great. This is all I want to do. And then, maybe a couple of years goes by and you're like, you know what, I would like to actually settle down and I don't want to travel so much anymore. I would like to buy a house. I would like to have a family. So your goals can change. The good thing and the important thing to know is that you define your own success. So don't worry too much about trying to keep up with what your friends are doing, because necessarily what they're doing doesn't necessarily mean that it's successful for you. You don't want to just imitate what they're doing. Once you do come across a decision you have to make, you want to research and experiment. So consider the options. For instance, say you're nearing the end of, or you have maybe a semester left of school for your BCIT program. That's great, but you get this offer to move to London, England in 2 weeks to get a job, or to have a job there. So what do? Well, obviously your options are to stay in Vancouver or to go to London. You want to research your options as much as you can. So you want to use the internet, you want to use books and magazines, and also first-hand accounts, whether you know people that have moved, whether you want to just look at blogs of people that have done it online. It's very important to kind of get these kinds of first-hand accounts of people that have actually experienced such a thing. And if possible, you want to experiment with the options. So if you do have the possibility, maybe head over to London for a visit first before you decide. Not always the case in many life decisions, but if you do have that ability to do so, I would say do that. And consider what would happen if each option was implemented. So what are the consequences of your actions? And you just have to be prepared for them. It doesn't mean that you should not do them if the consequences would be bad. It just means you need to be aware. And of course, you want to evaluate the pros and cons, which, we all know it's the positive and the negatives of something. So in my case, say I wanted to move back to Winnipeg, I would look at the pros and cons of moving back to Winnipeg. So as you see, some of my pros include being close to family, an affordable real estate market. Once I do that, I can kind of have a look back to what my life goals are and be like, okay, one of my life goals is to buy a house. Maybe I should move back to Winnipeg. That would help me get to this goal. Cons, of course, are long and cold winters, annoying mosquitoes. So, I have to weigh out my pros and cons to see what might be best. So, essentially, like I mentioned, what you want to do is visualize your life. So, have a vision. So, this is something proactive that you want to do even before you need to make a decision. When a decision does come into effect, you want to consider your options. So find out what these options are, do your research, if possible, experiment. And at the very end, you also want to make sure you weigh out the negatives and positives about each of those options. So now you're better prepared to make your big life decisions, and I wish you luck. Once again, it is Myleen. If you do have any questions, as it is a webinar, we can't actually have a conversation, but please feel free to leave your comments below and I'll be able to help you out with any of the questions you may have. Have a great night. Thank you.